Something has been pressing at the base of your throat for days, a sentence you keep forming and swallowing back down. Not from fear exactly, from a sense that the moment wasn't ready. Maybe you told yourself it was the week, the pressure, the heat of the season sitting heavy on your shoulders. But today, the 28th of June, 2026, Mars crosses into Gemini, and what you have been carrying in your throat is not frustration, it is voltage. This transit, the one astrologers call the Mercury's blade activation, hasn't aligned with this particular nodal pressure in nearly 2 years. The window it opens runs only until July 23rd, and what you speak into motion before that date carries a force that ordinary weeks simply do not hold. There is a specific reason your body registered this shift before your mind named it, and what that reason reveals about the next 6 weeks will change how you move through every conversation that matters. Mars enters Gemini today, the 28th of June, 2026, and something in you already knows it. That restlessness in your hands, the words forming faster than you can speak them, the sense that something has been building and that today, right now, it cracks open. Stay with me through this entire reading, because what I'm going to share in the final minutes will give you a concrete map for the next 6 weeks, a window that, once it closes, won't return in this form for nearly 2 years. This transit speaks to 3 kinds of people: the person who has been sitting on an idea, a conversation, a truth, holding it behind their teeth because the timing never felt right; the person whose mind has been racing at night, not from anxiety exactly, but from a kind of electric pressure, as though something wants out; and the person who has been spreading themselves thin across too many directions, feeling the pull of everything at once, without the anchor of a single clear purpose. Whoever you are in this moment, Mars in Gemini has a message aimed directly at you. Here is what the sky is doing right now, and why your body felt it before your mind did. Mars, the planet of drive, action, and directed force, has just crossed the threshold into Gemini, the sign ruled by Mercury, the messenger, the swift strategist, the twin flame of the zodiac's mental realm. When the warrior scribe meets the messenger's domain, energy stops moving in a straight line. It multiplies, it branches, it accelerates through language, through thought, through the quick-fire exchange of ideas between minds. The shoulders tighten, the hands want to move, the lungs feel shallower than usual, breath coming slightly faster, as though the body is already gearing up for something. You may have noticed an almost uncontrollable urge to write something down, to reach out to someone, to finally say the thing you have been rehearsing in private. A restlessness not in the legs, but in the upper body, the arms, the hands, the throat, words that rise and catch before they reach the air. A low-grade hum of urgency in the chest that you couldn't quite name until now. That is Mars in Gemini arriving. That is Mercury's blade being placed in your hands. This is not a gradual shift. The energy peaks today, on the 28th of June, 2026, as Mars completes its ingress, and the sky opens a channel between willpower and articulation that hasn't existed with this clarity in nearly 2 years. The warrior scribe energy is at full force right now, in this moment, and the next 6 weeks will carry its signature: bold communication, mental agility, the courage to speak what you know to be true. The cosmic mechanic is precise. Mars moves into Gemini and activates the shoulders, the arms, the hands, and the lungs. Nervous energy travels upward, the reflexes of speech sharpen. The impulse to act finds its expression not through the body's raw force, but through the mind's swift reach. You think faster. You speak before you have time to soften the edges. You reach for more input, more connection, more ideas. This is not a flaw. This is the transit working exactly as intended. Settle into that for a moment. Just breathe. The acceleration you feel is real. and it belongs to something larger than your personal restlessness. Cast your mind back to the last 6 weeks, somewhere between mid-May and the days leading up to today. You may have felt a kind of compression, a sense that things were taking longer than they should, that the words you reached for weren't landing. That plans stalled, conversations circled without resolving, and the clarity you were expecting kept arriving one step too late. Perhaps you felt frustrated, as though you were pushing against something invisible, a wall that gave no explanation for being there. That was not failure, that was preparation. The sky was compressing your energy the way a bow is drawn back before release. Every stalled conversation was holding tension for the one that is about to matter. Every unfinished thought was waiting for the mental speed Mars in Gemini now provides. The pressure you felt was not punishment, it was accumulation. And today, the compression releases. What was building in you during those weeks, the ideas you half-formed, the truths you circled without speaking, the projects that stayed in the draft stage, all of it becomes fuel now. The bow releases. The warrior scribe lifts the blade. And what almost nobody tells you about this release is how quickly it can scatter if you don't understand what's underneath it. Which brings us to the first of 3 things Mars in Gemini is trying to show you today. The first revelation lives in a place most people overlook entirely, the space between a thought and a spoken word. There is a moment, just before you speak, when you know whether what you are about to say is true or merely convenient. Mars in Gemini tightens that moment. It shrinks the gap between impulse and expression, which means the thoughts that have been living in your chest, the ones you've been managing carefully, keeping contained, are now much closer to the surface. You may feel it as a knot in the throat, a sentence that forms fully formed before you've decided to say it. A sharpness that surprises you in conversation, as though the words arrive before the diplomacy does. Here's the hidden message. The warrior scribe in you is asking whether your voice is actually aligned with your knowing, not your polished voice, not the one you calibrate for the room, the one that knows the truth before the performance begins. This transit carries a rare cosmic door opening, and the door leads to your own articulation. The things you have not said, because the moment never felt safe enough, because you weren't sure you had the right words, because you feared how the truth would land. Mars in Gemini is standing at the threshold now, holding that door open. What you say in the next 6 weeks has more force than usual. Words spoken with clarity and conviction under this transit tend to stick. They move things. They begin things. They close chapters that have been dragging open far too long. And there is a second layer to this that goes even deeper, something about what happens when that voice finally stops defending and starts building. The second revelation arrives through the hands. Notice, right now, whether your hands want to move. Whether there is a restlessness in the fingers, a desire to write, to sketch, to type, to gesture through what you cannot yet articulate. Mars in Gemini activates the hands as instruments of thought, and the behavioral symptom is this: a sudden, almost urgent appetite for new input. New reading, new conversation, new learning, a low tolerance for the same loop, the same routine, the same exchange that goes nowhere. That appetite is not distraction. That is the swift strategist coming online. Here's the hidden message. The energy you are feeling right now is a form of intelligence searching for the right vessel. It wants to move through something specific, not through everything at once, but through the one pursuit that has been calling you longest. The one project you keep returning to, the one conversation you keep rehearsing, the one skill you have been meaning to develop since before you can remember. This is a rare cosmic door opening, and it opens specifically for the version of you that picks one direction and moves with full mental force. The twin flame energy of Gemini is not about choosing between two selves. It is about bringing both, the strategic mind and the courageous voice into alignment behind a single, clear intention. The interesting thing is, what happens in the body when you do that? Because the third revelation is the one that reframes everything that came before it. The third revelation lives in the breath. If you have been waking between 2 and 4 in the morning, mind already running before you have fully surfaced, that is not insomnia. That is Mars in Gemini moving through the lungs. The upper body activation is real and physical, shallower breath, a subtle quickening of the respiratory rhythm, a sense that the mind is processing something even in sleep. Racing thoughts that resist slowing down, heightened sensitivity to noise and information, an almost involuntary scanning of what's unfinished. Here's the hidden message. That nocturnal restlessness is your mental body sorting through what it has been given permission to want. The things that surface at 3 in the morning are not anxieties to be managed. They are priorities. They are the things the Mercury's blade in you knows are real, even when daylight asks you to be measured about them. This is a rare cosmic door opening, and it opens specifically when you stop treating the night's urgency as a problem and start treating it as information. Write down what surfaces. The ideas that arrive in the dark hours under this transit carry the fingerprint of the warrior scribe, at his most honest, unguarded, unpolished, precise. The voice that speaks at 3 in the morning is the one Mars in Gemini wants you to bring into daylight before July 23rd. And now, something softer, something genuinely beautiful. Because Mars in Gemini is not all edge and urgency. Beneath the quickening, beneath the mental acceleration, there is a current of genuine delight, the pleasure of a conversation that surprises you, the lightness that comes when an idea finally clicks. The warmth of speaking your truth to someone and having them truly hear it. This transit carries a quality of intellectual joy that is rare, the kind that makes you feel alive in your mind, curious about what comes next, genuinely interested in the people around you. Let that land. It is also part of what is opening right now. Which of the 3 revelations touched you most directly? The voice, the hands, or the breath? Leave it in the comments. I read them, and it helps me understand what the collective is experiencing in real time. We are halfway through this reading, and it is worth pausing to anchor what we have established. Mars has entered Gemini today, the 28th of June, 2026, carrying the energy of the warrior scribe, the force that moves through language, thought, and the courageous act of speaking what you know. The compression of the past 6 weeks was not obstruction, it was preparation, and 3 doorways have opened: the voice, the hands, the breath, each one asking you to bring something that was internal into the world of action. What comes next is the part most people aren't told, what this energy does when it is not directed, and how to make sure you are not one of them. We are currently in the middle of an 1-8-month lunar cycle tied to the nodal axis, a cycle that began with seeds of communication and is now reaching its active expression. Mars entering Gemini today marks a forward pulse in that broader rhythm. The next full moon in Sagittarius, the sign opposite Gemini, arrives in December 2026. Mark that date. Between now and then, what you speak into being under this transit will be tested, expanded, and brought to fruition. The question the collective is sitting with right now: what is worth the full force of your voice? And that question carries its own shadow. Now the part that requires honesty. The Ptolemaic terms, the ancient boundary system that assigns the first 6 degrees of any sign to a specific planetary ruler, place the opening degrees of Gemini under Mercury's own authority, not Mars's. This matters because it means Mars's initial days in this sign are softened and channeled through Mercury's precision. The energy right now is not blunt force. It is Mercury's blade, sharp, exact, intelligent, but also capable of cutting in directions you did not intend. The shadow of Mars in Gemini is not laziness. It is the scattering that looks like productivity. It is the calendar that fills with 10 commitments because each one sounded compelling in the moment. It is the conversation that begins as honest communication and accelerates into argument because the words arrived faster than the wisdom. It is the brilliant half-finished idea, and then another and another, leaving a trail of open loops and nothing completed. Argumentative impulse is the specific shadow here. The sharpness that Mars brings to Gemini's already quick tongue can become aggression disguised as intelligence. The person who always has the better point, the one who debates when what is needed is listening. The mind that reaches for the clever response before the other person has finished speaking. Before any significant move in the next 6 weeks, ask yourself 3 things. Is this speed coming from clarity or from restlessness? Am I speaking to be heard or to be right? And is this one of the many things pulling at my attention or the one thing that actually matters? Superficial engagement is the other shadow, committing to conversations, projects, and connections at the level of enthusiasm rather than depth, then discovering that enthusiasm alone does not sustain what you've started. The distinction between bold action and blind action is simple, even if it is not easy. Bold action has a spine. It knows why. Let the clarity settle before moving on, because the guidance that follows is specific, and it only works if you bring the real version of yourself to it. 3 actions: concrete, grounded, effective. First, identify the one communication that matters most in the next 6 weeks and give it everything. Not the 10 conversations you could have, not the 5 projects you could launch. The one. Write the proposal, have the conversation, record the first episode. Send the message you have been drafting in your head for 3 months. Mars in Gemini at full power gives your words unusual force right now, and force applied to one target moves things. Force scattered across 10 targets moves nothing. Choose the one and commit to it before June 29th, so the momentum is already in motion. Second, build in a daily practice of grounding the upper body. The physical activation of this transit is real. Shoulders, arms, hands, lungs, and without conscious release, that energy becomes tension, sleeplessness, or the kind of reactive sharpness that damages the very relationships you are trying to engage. 10 minutes in the morning, slow breath, deliberate stillness, writing without agenda, not to suppress the energy, to direct it. A river with banks is a river that builds power. A river without banks is a flood. Third, before any significant conversation under this transit, pause long enough to hear the other person fully before formulating your response. This is where the warrior scribe earns his name, not through the speed of the reply, but through the precision of what he chooses to say and when. The most powerful thing Mars in Gemini offers is not volume, it is accuracy. A single well-placed sentence, spoken at the right moment to the right person with the right intention, that is Mercury's blade. That is what this transit is actually training you to use. Now, the macro view, because what is happening today is larger than a single 6-week transit. Mars moves through Gemini approximately every 2 years, but the specific alignment available right now, the activation of communication, the nodal context, the opening of this particular 8-month cycle toward its expression, this configuration will not repeat in this form. The warrior scribe energy is at its peak today, the 28th of June, 2026, and it diminishes as Mars moves further into Gemini and eventually into Cancer. What you begin before the transit ends carries the full signature of this opening. The rare cosmic door that opened today does not stay open indefinitely. Have you fully used your voice in the last 2 years? Have the ideas that have been circling found their form? Has the truth you rehearse privately made its way into the world? This is not a rhetorical challenge. It is the actual question Mars in Gemini places in front of every person it touches. The warrior scribe does not wait for the perfect moment. The warrior scribe recognizes that the moment is now, imperfect, alive, and open. Between June 29 and July 23, the sky moves toward its next shift, and what happens in that window is binary. Old conversations heal and emotional clarity returns, or misunderstandings pile up and important messages get lost. It's binary. There is no middle ground where you drift through this transit without consequence. The energy is too active for that. What determines which side you land on is whether you pause to listen before you respond. That single practice, the deliberate pause between receiving and reacting, is the hinge the entire transit turns on. I'll give you the precise mechanic in the next video. Here is the concrete map I promised you at the start of this reading, the one worth staying for. The next 6 weeks carry a window that will not return in this form for nearly 2 years. Mars in Gemini at peak force, Mercury's blade in your hands, the compression of the past weeks finally releasing into action. The one communication you have been holding back is your entry point. Speak it before June 29th. You now carry something most people watching this transit will miss. The understanding that restlessness is not noise but signal. That the urgency in your chest is the warrior scribe pointing directly at what matters most. Move with the precision this transit demands. One voice, one direction. The sky gave you the blade. Now choose where it lands. Unlock your destiny before tomorrow. Right now, as Mars enters Gemini today, which of these 3 do you feel most strongly? The urge to speak something unspoken, restlessness in your hands, or racing thoughts at night? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe if you want every major transit decoded before it arrives, so you are always one step ahead of the sky. The next cosmic shift is already moving into position, and what it reveals about your direction will change how you read everything that happened today. Unlock your destiny before tomorrow.